Okay, take two. Welcome to the final meeting of the Next Generation 911 Commission. We are in the fourth floor of the Miller Senate Office Building in Annapolis, and I am grateful to everyone who is here in person, as well as anyone who is watching our live stream. So we went through some of this already, but we had some technical problems, which is why we are starting again a few minutes later. I want to thank our Office of Information Systems folks and Anna in particular for helping us get this all started, along with, of course, my fabulous Chief of Staff, Abby Snyder, who has navigated all of this. Before we start, we already did this before, but I want to do it again on the live stream. We discussed a mask policy for this meeting, and I just want to do that again briefly, which is that we will all stay masked while in this meeting, and then we decided that when the person is speaking that they can remove their mask. And so I just want to ask again, does anyone have any concerns, questions, or disagreement with that policy? Seeing none, that will be the policy we use today, and so I will remove my mask when I am speaking, which will also make it more intelligible, hopefully, for those who are watching the live stream. I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville, and for the last 4 very long years, the chair of this extraordinary commission. I am so grateful to everyone in this room, everyone who has served on this commission, our consultants, the staff, the interns, and just everyone, our courageous women and men under the headsets, and everyone who helps to save lives and property every day by working in a public safety answering point, in our telecommunications industry, our technology industry, our geographic information systems, and more. So we are going to go over a bunch of stuff for this final meeting. Let me start with the schedule for today. We have an agenda, and we will go through the agenda. If there's something that's not on it that you think is important for us to review, I think we've got flexibility. Lunch is being brought over, and we will adjourn and then have a celebration lunch and get to hang out a little bit. The plan was that we would then go to the State House for bill signing. Last night, we learned very disappointingly that the 911 omnibus bill is not on the list of bills that the governor will be signing today. There are 390 more bills, and they are sort of triaging and working our way through that. So the hope and expectation is that it will be signed at one of the subsequent bill signing dates, but none of that has been confirmed, and this administration tends to communicate kind of last minute, which makes it a challenge to share with you all if you're interested, or if even I'm interested in making the trip to Annapolis, because they do tend to share kind of the night before. So we are going to do a plan B, which is we are going to go to the Senate. We are going to be on the president's dais, and we will take photos and stuff as a group. And so that's what we will do as our way of acknowledging the work that we've done. Any questions about that before we move on? Okay. I've gone over bathrooms, I've gone over all that. There are donuts, there are bathrooms, there are all that. And I just want to remind you again that this meeting is live streamed. When your microphone is on, the camera will be on you. When you are done speaking, if you could please make sure you turn off your microphone so it can go to the next speaker. If I can ask you to please make sure that your phones are either off or on vibrate so they're not drawing attention or distraction from those who are watching the live stream. Abby, anything else before we get started?
Just please make sure.
Okay, so with that, let's start with introductions. We will go around the room if you could say your first name, last name, affiliation, and the role that you've played in this commission, and then we'll get started with the work. And I think, let's start with Cecilia Warren at this end of the horn. We'll come around here and end with our witness table folks. So go ahead, Cecilia.
Cecilia Warren, Maryland Department of Disabilities. I'm the Emergency Preparedness Policy Director there. In this commission, I worked with the Technology and Cybersecurity Subcommittee. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Tony Rose. I'm the Deputy Director of the Charles County Department of Emergency Services. Served on this commission representing the National Capital Region 911 centers.
Good morning. I'm Wayne Darrell, Director of Emergency Services for Kent County. On this commission, I've been representing small counties.
Good morning, and State Senator Ed Riley from District 33, Anne Arundel County. I've been carrying the senator's papers around for a few years. It's been an honor to be here. Of all the things that I remind everyone every time I get a chance in committee and everywhere else is that 911 is a core function of government. It's a core function. This is one of the things that keeps the fabric of our society together, and very pleased and honored to be part of this. My disappointment is workers' comp didn't get through. I think that's a valid issue. I'm a 45-year insurance agent. I know why and how these things happen, and would encourage the group to continue to push for that very important issue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anna, before we go forward, I just really want to acknowledge what an important ally and partner and friend Senator Riley has been for the last 4 years. It's important that public safety be communicated publicly and to legislators as a bipartisan issue. You would think that that wouldn't be a surprise. Unfortunately, too often it has been. And Senator Riley has just been ferocious and thoughtful and a wonderful advocate and friend and ally. So thank you. He has announced that he will not be seeking re-election. And so I just want to thank him for his service here and on so many issues, places that we strongly agree and sometimes don't agree on. But he's a thoughtful, well-respected legislator and a really good human being. So thank you, Ed.
Anna Sierra started on this commission as the representative of the Eastern Shore Communications Alliance. As the Director of Emergency Services for Caroline County, I am now with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management and fill that role today.
Russell Strickland, good morning. I'm the Secretary of the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, and I would really kind of like to echo Senator Riley's comment about 911 being a core function of government. And I think the effort by this commission that created the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, which I also believe that emergency management is a core function of state government, brought two entities together in a marriage that is really going to benefit the local jurisdictions as well as our state in its entirety. So I salute and thank each and every one of you for the support to create this department, and pledge to you that I will do everything I can to further your efforts. So thank you.
Good morning. I'm Charlene Flaherty. I am from Prince George's County. I am representing MACO in this effort, and I am also very proud and humbled to be part of this effort. And whew, it was just an incredible ride, and I thank you very, very much. I'm sorry. I'm chair of the Staffing and Training Subcommittee. Thank you.
Good morning, Randy Cunningham, Harford County Emergency Services. I am the chair of the Technology and Cybersecurity Subcommittee for the past 2 years, I believe. And just want to give kudos also to Bill Ferretti, who started as the chair in the beginning couple years of the commission and did a lot of the legwork that set the stage for this subcommittee.
Good morning. I'm Steve Souter, and I'm honored and privileged and humbled to be the vice chair of this commission. There's a lot I could say, but I want to direct my comments on a couple of things. In this room and on this commission are folks that didn't begin with the commission, and similarly, there are people that are not in the room that did begin with the commission. And as we go around and introduce ourselves, I want to be sure that we do not lose sight of those that were here and that served before us and with us, and that can take equal pride with the achievements that we are going to talk about today. I also want to comment on the fact that this commission has been very close to us. We've been reading email and texting messages and occasionally meeting in person, and we get all wrapped up in this. And this is a Maryland thing, and we're proud, and we should be. But I want to draw our collective attention to the fact that Maryland is only one of 50 states. And because I'm an old guy and I know a lot of people, I communicate a lot with my colleagues and friends around the country. And I can tell you without 1 ounce of doubt that what we have done in Maryland is known across the breadth of our land. It is admired. It is, quite frankly, puzzling that we were able to bring together this coalition of parties, stakeholders as we call them, and to look at the issues confronting 911 on a global basis here in Maryland, and to go about attempting to do, and in most cases doing, what we thought was the right thing to do. So as you end your term on the commission, please do so being very, very proud that you served on the commission and that we achieved what we did in the commission and in the legislature in support of our fellow Marylanders. So thank you for your time. I love you guys, and I'm going to miss being with you.
So you all have probably heard me say that one of the best decisions I've ever made related to 911. Look who just walked in. Oh my gosh. Welcome, welcome, Mr. Myers. Please, no, take a chair. Just move the reports around. One of the smartest decisions I ever made was asking Steve Souter to be my vice chair, and he has been an extraordinary partner and confidant and sounding board for me. And he and I have agreed on almost every strategy, tactic, substance, process, everything, and so I know I'm on the right track if Steve signs off. So let's continue our way around. And Mr. Myers, I really was going to call you and just offer the symbolic invitation, but I'm so thrilled that you're here. Thank you. We will get to you. You will be the last person to introduce yourself. So we are in the midst of introductions. We are masks on when we are not speaking and mask off when we speak. So with that, let's continue with the new chair. So your timing is perfect. Jack.
Good morning. My name is Jack Markey. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Frederick County, Maryland. Serve as a member of this commission on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties. Participated in the oversight and accountability as well as the technology and the cybersecurity committees. Very proud to also be a member of the Maryland 911 Board, and as of January to assume a mantle last held by Mr. Myers as chairman of the Maryland 911 Board. So thank you for that. And if I may indulge just a moment to recognize a commission member who's not present with us here today due to illness, the one member of this commission that was directly representing 911 specialists, Tracy German, who also serves from Frederick. 911 specialists save lives across the state all day, every day, before responders arrive. And so on behalf of the over 1,500 911 specialists across the state, my thanks goes out to them, and thanks to everyone here for continuing to hold up that mission in a bipartisan, everyday way, the same way they carry their mission when they come into work every day. So thank you.
Scott Broman from the City of Baltimore. I proudly sit on the the 911 State Board, representing fire departments across Maryland. And I had the pleasure of chairing the Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee for the past year. And I want to just acknowledge the Senator and Steve Souter for what I thought was an impossible task 4 years ago. And you've taken us, I don't want to say the finish line because our work is never done, but almost to the finish line. And you've done great things. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And you seem to have an addendum thing on your hand. What's that about?
For the record, I did get married 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
We wish you a lifetime of joy. And did you decide to change your name? Okay. Abby. Scott, you need to turn off your mic.
Abby Snyder, Senator Kagan's Chief of Staff, and I just want to say it has been such an honor to get to work with all of you. The work you do is beyond just life-saving, and the emotional stress and all the things that you all go through every single day is so heroic, and I'm just grateful to know all of you. So thank you for letting me be a small piece of what you do every day.
Kevin Canale, Legislative Director at the Maryland Association of Counties. I echo everyone's sentiments. I don't think I've ever been around a more impressive group of people. Madam Chair, I can't imagine someone who could have done this better and got us across the finish line. Vice Chairman Souter, unbelievable resource, someone so respected. I'm proud to have been a small part of this. I think my role's mostly been in the legislative piece, and we have so many people here representing counties, and this is something I'll be proud of for the rest of my life. I can tell you that counties across the state are incredibly grateful for all the work that's gone into this. So just thank you all so much for what you do every day. The work is never done, but we're going to continue to push on and make sure that we have the resources to save lives every day.
So obviously, I could interrupt every single time with each of you because I just so respect and adore each of you. I just want to say that Kevin Canale and the organization, Maryland Association of Counties, has been an invaluable partner, making Next Gen 911 a top legislative priority, caught our colleagues' attention. They took this legislation and take this legislation very seriously. And when MACO, the Maryland Association of Counties, steps forward and says, we care about this. This is important to 24 jurisdictions. Legislators and hopefully the governor pay attention to that. And so really thank you for all that you've invested and the credibility that MACO has brought to this commission. So thank you. Bardana.
Hello, I'm Bardana Woods, retiree of Washington County, Maryland's 911 Center. After 36 years, I retired right before COVID, and I'm now a proud employee of Frederick County Communications as well. And I am representing the National Emergency Number Association and am a member of the Staffing and Training Subcommittee.
Hi, I'm Sue Greentree, and I work with the Staffing and Training Committee. I also am a retired 911 specialist. I worked for Anne Arundel County for 35 years and retired exactly the same time Bardana did, right before the pandemic hit. And this, being a part of the work of this commission, has truly been the highlight of my career as far as I'm concerned. And Senator Kagan, what you put together and assembling all of these people, it's amazing, and I cannot tell you how grateful I am after doing that job for all those years and knowing that we've accomplished more in 4 years than I saw in the 35 that I worked. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Julia Fisher. I want to say that I'm honored and privileged to have gotten to know all of you. Many of you were strangers, and now you are not only colleagues but friends. I am humbled by the work that all of you do every day. I come from the information technology sector, so I did not live and breathe this every day, but now I know better. I have been enlightened. I have been encouraged, inspired, truly. To what Steve said, I was there all those years ago to see that initial meeting, and I saw the mountain that needed to be climbed. And yes, that mountain will continue to need to be climbed, but the significant progress that has been made is just breathtaking. And again, that is because of everyone in this room and everyone who continues to support, us every day. So again, I digress, sorry, thank you. I represent a very proud community as well, the Geographic Information Systems community across Maryland, and I do so, again, very proudly. And again, thank you for the opportunity to work amongst your midst. So, thank you.
Hi, good morning. Scott Roper, Executive Director of the Maryland 911 Board, representing the Executive Director of the Maryland 911 Board. Over the period of 4 years of this commission, I worked with the Finance and Accountability, Oversight and Accountability and Finance and Structure subcommittees.
Hi, good morning. I'm Nikki Tidy. I'm a project manager with Mission Critical Partners and have supported the Staffing and Training Subcommittee over several years as the commission has gone forth.
Good morning, Joshua Jack from Mission Critical Partners. Honored to be able to support the commission and specifically the Technology and Cybersecurity Subcommittee.
Before we go to you, I just want to really say that nothing that we have done, nothing, would have been possible without Mission Critical Partners, because you put all the smartest people in the room who are working diligently, but without the national perspective, without the deep, deep issue knowledge and perspective, none of this would have moved forward. So Josh and Nikki are in the room. Sherry Griffith Powell is monitoring it online. Molly Falls has just left Mission Critical about a month or so ago, and she was kind of my primary point person. We have had a number of Mission Critical experts and partners, and I just want to thank you so much for all that you have done. And you continue to support the 911 board, but your work has been extraordinary. So thank you. And a former Mission Critical person, Walt.
Good morning. Walt Kaplan with Rapid Deploy and formerly with Mission Critical Partners. And I played an early supporting role with both the Maryland 911 Board as well as with the Commission. And I just want to say it's truly been one of my life's honors to have supported this incredible brain trust that has been brought together to address these issues. And I thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tania Reddick. I am the 911 Director for the City of Baltimore. And I want to say it's been a pleasure and an honor to serve as a witness to several bills, Senate bills and House bills for this commission, as well as speak on behalf of the 1,000 911 specialists that sit in the seat every day and do the jobs that they do within the PSEP. So thank you.
Well, I think that that honor belongs to someone else now. But thank you, Senator. Anthony Myers, I am representing the Maryland Public Service Commission, more specifically Chairman Jason Stanek. And I'm a former member of the Maryland 911 Board, former chair of that organization, now chaired by Chairman Jack Markey and assisted by Assistant Chair Mr. Steve Souter. Working on this with this group has been quite a ride. And working with the senator in particular, you know, I liken it to, I've been a manager for a long time, for a few decades now. And one of the things that you learn as a manager is that some people you have to push, some people you have to pull, some people you just have to get out of their way. And Senator Kagan is definitely, very definitely one of those people that you have to get out of the way. I can't count the many conversations that we had on overnights, weekends, holidays, but it just goes to show the level of commitment that that she brings to bear with this important initiative. I've been a public servant. I've been with the state of Maryland for more than 25 years now. And I can tell you that my work with this committee and my work with the 911 board is among the most critical, the most important, and certainly that which I'm most proud of during my tenure. I encourage this group, now that I'm no longer a member of the 911 board, I encourage this group to continue the tremendous strides that you've made, and you're in good hands. And you should all take a level of congratulations for what you've been able to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind words. You can make me tear up. The question today is how much I'm going to cry and all that, because you all have become family. I mean, we really have built a community here with this group, and have gone through the battles. And Mr. Myers, what you said is all that. You have taught me. We have debated. We have argued, and we have found common ground. So I have the deepest respect for you. So thank you for your many, many years of leadership on these issues and so many others. So I'm delighted that you're here. Thank you. So before we start with the agenda that you have before us, before you, I just want to do a brief history and overview of the commission for those who might be watching or listening for the first time. And as I think the vice chair has indicated, some folks are new to this room, to this commission, and some have been here for the whole 4 years. So I'm going to do this briefly, but I do want to do it comprehensively. So I started my journey on this, and the reason that I sponsored legislation to create this commission was when my friend and constituent Rockville activist Carl Henn was struck by lightning during a freak thunderstorm, and 911 was busy, and someone finally threw him into a truck and took him to a hospital where he later died. And it was between my tenure in the House and my tenure in the Senate. I was out for 12 years, and I said, if I'm ever back in office again, I will do something in Carl's memory. And I could never have predicted that it would have taken over my life and brought me to such extraordinary places. I've been to 17 of the 24 public safety answering points, or PSAP, our 911 centers. I'm going to remind everyone to try to avoid acronyms, and please define them when you use them, so that folks know what we're talking about. So I couldn't have this meeting without mentioning Carl Henn again, and just there are 3 people who have died in my district in 3 different ways, and you know, we talk about never again when it comes to the Holocaust, and we are in the midst of Ukraine, and we are in the midst of a lot of things. To the degree that we can avoid having people die unnecessarily, when 911 isn't updated, when the geographic information system, the maps aren't updated, when there aren't enough people under the headsets and people get busy signals or voicemails, when people aren't trained sufficiently, like, we really have to make sure that we can avoid that in the state of Maryland and anywhere in the country. Each year for the last 4 years, we have released a report. There are copies in piles around Ms. Reddick and Mr. Myers. So the first year, the second year, the third year, and the fourth and final each include issue information as well as recommendations that were included in legislation that I sponsored along with Senator Riley, and then our House sponsors as well. I want to just go briefly through the list of bills that we have enacted. So because I want us to just be really proud of all we have enacted. And not everything has gone through, not everything has gone through the way we wanted, but this commission has gained just such visibility, credibility, and effectiveness. And so I just want to run through this. In 2018, we created the commission and allowed the 24 counties to offer 911 specialist tax credits that are given to other emergency personnel. And several counties have either done that or have been exploring doing that. In 2019, we started with the geographic information systems and making sure that we upgrade that, and started working towards technology being upgraded to allow for texts and phones and videos. And hopefully everybody knows in this room and watching, on August 20th, 2020, every single place in the entire state of Maryland went live with text to 911. If you can, call. But if you can't, either because you are deaf or hard of hearing, because you're hiding in a closet, or having a health challenge, an emergency, you can text to 911. Make sure you include information about your location. And we should continue to tell people that, because most people still don't know that. We addressed cybersecurity. We started dealing with staffing when we had 13% vacancies in our 911 specialist positions. We authorized counties to increase the local portion of the 911 fee, and we'll get back to that later. This was the Carl Henn bill. We adjusted the funding model. We closed the loophole so that if you have 5 phones on one phone bill, you would pay for 5 phones, because any of those 5 could be needing 911 services. We expanded the authority of the Emergency Number Systems Board, now renamed the 911 Board, to pay for more costs to lighten the load on our counties. We made sure that the 911 Trust Fund includes funds that can only ever be spent on 911 services. In 2020, we asked the comptroller to start auditing 911 fee collections and remittance, because we were pretty confident that we weren't getting the right amounts. And that has proven to be the case, and we will hear from Mr. Roper and Chair Markey a little bit on that. Again, increased software, more public education about text to 911 and other. We spent a lot of time on Carey's Law to make sure that people in a high-rise building, in a hotel, or elsewhere don't ever have to dial 9 before dialing 911, anything to get an outside line. You just should be able to dial anywhere in Maryland, pick up any phone, and dial 911 with no other access. More standards and training for our 911 specialists, and an emergency response team to intervene after disasters or crises. In 2021, we created MDEM, the Maryland Emergency Management Agency. MEMA was changed the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. It is a cabinet-level department, and rather than a director, we now have a cabinet secretary in Secretary Strickland, and so ably supported by our fabulous Anna Sierra. We started really working on outage notification, and we have been in touch with the Federal Communications Commission as part of their exploration of what outage notifications should be required. Modified membership on the 911 board to make sure that it is more comprehensive and reflective of the key stakeholders. GIS, the Geographic Information System, data continues to be a priority, and more on recruitment. So this year, the 2021 report had 98 pages that included 24 recommendations that were incorporated into 6 bills. We're going to go through those, and so with that overview, let me pause and see if there are questions or comments about any of those bills, any of those laws that we have passed to date. Okay, seeing none, then I'd like to shift to a report from the director, followed by the chair of the 911 board, Scott Roper. What we are looking for is the fiscal overview and the status and kind of where things are and how things are going. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Good morning again. Scott Roper, Executive Director of the Maryland 911 Board. Prior to the enactment of Carl Henn's law, the board typically funded about $12 to $13 million per year in awards for enhancements to 911 service across the state. When I talk about fiscal years, I mean the state's fiscal year, which is July 1 to June 30th. So in FY 2021, which was the first year of Carl Henn's law, the board made 332 individual awards to all the counties, totaling about $45.4 million. Of note in those, there were phone system replacements in the amount of about $15.9 million, next generation 911 implementation and service in the amount of $15.5 million, a new category that was added for the board that fiscal year was maintenance and recurring 911 service charges, which is about $5.4 million, and cybersecurity monitoring and services, we funded about $1.4 million that year. As of this fiscal year, as of 2 days ago, the 10th, the board has funded 293 individual project requests totaling $38 million. Just to kind of give you some comparison numbers, at the same point in fiscal year 19, which was the year before Carl Henn's law, we had 202 submitted projects as of May 10th of that year. So between fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2022, we have a 45% increase overall in funding requests. This fiscal year, as of Tuesday, my office has processed 521 individual county payment requests totaling $27.5 million. And one of the things that we have found as part of our transition into the Maryland Department of Emergency Management and creating a new agency is we've identified a need that we have to add an accounts payable person for my office, which is currently in process converting our secretary position to an AP person to perform the AP and reconciliation work for the board. County revenue, the pass-through revenue from the county 911 fee, in fiscal year 2019, which was before Carl Henn's law was enacted, that pass-through was $42.1 million. In fiscal year 2021, it was almost $63.3 million. So there's been a significant increase of almost $11 million, $21 million over those 2 years for county revenue, for county operations. Speaking of fee increases, currently the county 911 fee is set at a maximum of $1.50. As of July 1, 2021, 6 counties, Baltimore City, Caroline County, Carroll County, Garrett County, Wycomico County, and Worcester County have all respectively raised their 911 fees. All raised theirs to $1.50 with the exception of Baltimore City and Wycomico County, which raised theirs to $1. This fiscal year, we only have one county that's submitted that they're increasing their county 911 fee, and that is Dorchester County is increasing theirs to $1.50, which is the current statutory maximum. You had asked about county audits, comptroller audits. The comptroller is doing those with their sales tax and use audits, so they did start them last year. The board did receive its report as such are required on December 1st of 2021. There were some discrepancies that were found and corrected through the audit process. Next Generation 911, the reason why we're all here to advance Next Generation 911 across Maryland. So far, of the 24 counties or 23 counties in Baltimore City within the state of Maryland, 22 counties have been approved and funded to migrate to Next Generation 911. 7 are currently live. Our most recent one was Allegheny County as of a couple weeks ago. And we have 2 jurisdictions that are pending submissions to the board, which are both in an active procurement process. So we hope to get those taken care of shortly. As far as the updates for the Maryland 911 Board, the Maryland 911 Board moved to the Maryland Department of Emergency Management on October 1st of 2022. As far as change with the board, as you said, Chairman Myers stepped down on January 1st of 2022 after a 2+ decade tenure as chair of the board. Jack Markey was appointed by the governor just a few days later after that. We currently have 3 vacancies. One is the Public Service Commission representative that was vacated with Chairman Myers stepping down from the board. The county finance position, which is a position that's to be nominated by Mako, hint, hint, Kevin. And then the police services position, and we have made requests to both the Maryland Chiefs of Police and the Maryland Sheriff's Association looking for interested persons to apply. One of the other things we did this year is that the Maryland Association of Counties Emergency Managers Affiliate Emergency Communications Committee, hopefully I got that all right. Okay, it's a lot to say. Has standing subcommittees as well as the board does. So this year we have aligned committees where there's mutual interest and overlap to offer greater efficiencies within the meeting process and to create fewer meetings, because we had several committees where people enjoyed roles on both. The work independently is needed on specific issues. So if there's a specific board issue or there's a specific ECC issue, they'll meet independently and then they'll work together on items of common interest. And our subcommittees have addressed or examining statutory requirements for statewide implementation for past legislation and legislation for this year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Scott. Are there questions for Scott Roper? I have one, Scott. You talked about the 45% increase in the number of projects, and you said this year 293 projects for $38 million were funded, which is really impressive. And you said 3 years ago, right before Carl Henn's law went into effect, on May 10th, 2019, you said 202 were submitted. Do you by any chance have the number of dollars?
As I said, we typically fund about $13 million. We typically fund about $13 million a year prior to that. So some years we came in a little lower than that, and some years we came in a little above that. The trust fund allows the funds to be carried over from year to year, but on average it's about $13 million.
So from 13 million to 38 million as of 2 days ago. So
Yeah, yes.
I just want whether it's the press or my legislative colleagues. So if you're wondering where that extra, 25 cents went, which was so critically important, it is really helping fund the infrastructure, the backbone of our 911 systems in all 24 jurisdictions. Mr. Myers, Mr. Canale, do either of you want to add anything before we shift to Chair Markey? The new chair of the 911 board, Jack Markey.
There you go, you're good.
We're fighting each other for control. First, I want to start by thanking Executive Director Roper for that report, trying to hit the highlights of what's a very complicated world, necessarily so. And I think it's important for everyone, sitting here knows much of this, but, I will try to do justice to the legacy that I inherited from Chairman Myers and say that 911 in Maryland is a special thing to me, to everyone in this room. And I think that is because we recognize that our strength is not because we all think exactly alike, or we are exactly alike, or we serve communities that look exactly alike, but that we share a common belief that Senator Kagan articulated, is that every person that dials 911 or texts 911 or whatever methods we will use in the future to contact 911, deserves the same quality of service, regardless of the jurisdiction they're in. So our focus as a board, for sure, where I can have some influence, but certainly the 911 community broadly, is on those residents and visitors to Maryland. If they're somewhere within our airspace to contact 911, we want to assure that we have appropriately trained, appropriately resourced folks ready to serve their needs. We're able to locate them thanks to the tireless work of our GIS community and our vendor community, and our carriers who are increasingly modernizing their technology to be able to locate the handset, not just what tower it's talking to, but to actually be able to tell us physically that this phone is in the 4th floor William Amos room in the Senate office building in Annapolis. And that takes work of committees, of individuals, and thankfully our legislators like Senator Riley and Senator Kagan. We focus on trying to establish and maintain a close functional relationship with our vendors. We hear monthly from our 911 service providers that are contracted to provide 911 service in the state of Maryland. We value that relationship because without a ability to have conversations with our carriers, to have them attend our meetings, we lose the technical expertise that they bring to the table. We lose the sense of what is happening across the nation, and I think that's a legacy Chairman Myers and others bring to our work that we will carry forward, is that 911 is many things. It is a system of systems. It is a Venn diagram of many different organizations working towards a common purpose, which is that excellent quality of service. And with that comes a level of role clarity. The board has a specific role. This commission has a specific role, but the most specific role is that 911 specialist I spoke about earlier. That's the person who changes lives. And above that person in every one of the 24 jurisdictions is a public safety answering point or a 911 center director, many of which are represented here on this board, many of which regularly seek support from the board for funding projects, funding efforts across the state. We are not the same. We recognized that we shared more common interests than we maybe believed in the past when we had separate committees talking about the same subjects and then having to reconcile them. So I appreciate the leadership of Mr. Ross Coates from Harford County, who is the chair of the, I won't attempt to
Committee.
I call them the 911 Directors Committee, but yes, they are they're a committee under the Maryland Association of Counties Emergency Managers affiliate. But they are a key constituency of the board. The board exists to coordinate and support, as directed by the legislature in our statutory responsibility, certain sets of activities. But I think it's very important for us to always remember that those 911 directors, the responsibilities in a Somerset County or a Prince George's County, in some ways are very similar. In other ways, they differ greatly. And a tribute that I've learned over my time on the board is that we as a board can adapt the directives of the legislature to those special missions when we open our ears, when we listen to diverse opinions, when we understand that not every jurisdiction has the same level of resource, the same political choices made available to them. So my goal in trying to fulfill my role as chairman is to set the table to establish the structure with my 23 other board members so that we can have those conversations and so that we're setting the table for how we do what we do together, so we're setting ourselves up for success. And 911 is a locally delivered service, should always be a locally delivered service, in my opinion, as an individual, not as the chair necessarily. But I think we are stronger when the board understands what those 911 directors need in their communities and seek to support them and do that in a manner that's consistent with our legislative charge. So we've been very fortunate. the path to success is not the path of least resistance. It's not the path of silence when you feel that something can be improved or you feel that something is going the wrong direction. And we look forward now that the General Assembly has adjourned and we know what our marching orders are that have been added to the board's plate. We're looking forward to establishing a strategic plan based on those items that we can carry forward into the future, working in partnership with our PSAPs, with the Maryland Association of Counties, and our legislative friends and advocates, and carry Maryland forward as a leading 911 jurisdiction, as we always have been and always will be. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we almost have twin hair here with our salt and pepper. Yeah, mine's increasingly salty, unfortunately. I'm very glad that a couple of you recognized Ross Coates and the ECC, the Emergency Communications Committee. They have been such important partners. And thank you to MACO, the Maryland Association of Counties, for hosting them and helping to facilitate their work. I also would be terribly remiss if I didn't acknowledge not just Senator Riley, but the other colleagues who are not able to be here. Delegate Hill was going to try to join us if her schedule allowed. She is a surgeon, and so she had some appointments today, and if she had cancellations, she was going to try to dash over here. And then you all know that Delegate Sue Krebs was a fierce and invested legislator in all of these issues, and started with kind of no knowledge. And she and I went to the Carroll County 911 Center, and she just soaked it up like a sponge and was a diligent student and a worthy opponent and an excellent ally when we agreed. And so she also has announced that she has chosen not to seek re-election. And again, a wonderful public servant, and she will return to Carroll County. And someone that we know, Steve Wantz, has been, I think he may have a primary, I'm not sure, I don't know if he has a general, I haven't paid enough attention to it, but if Steve were to come here with his expertise in public safety, that would be helpful, but that's not an endorsement, that's just a statement. I know that he is a candidate in that district. And then Michael Jackson, when he was in the House of Delegates, former sheriff from Prince George's County, he was on this commission and then became a senator and continued to be an ally, even though not coming to our commission meetings anymore, not an official member of the commission, has been a friend and colleague on these issues. So I want to give them a shout out. So with that, are there questions for Chair Markey before we move on? Okay, not being question askers today. All right, so we are going to pivot now to the 2022 legislative agenda. My plan is to go through each of them one by one. I would very much like to get feedback and engagement on these issues. And Mission Critical is going to help capture some of your thoughts or opinions. It will be in front of you. It is going to be on the screen, live streamed, and Susan Burkett is going to help us scroll down. I also just want to recognize Jeff Pollard, who has been my intern. Susan has been my legacy fellow and has been, both of them have been so helpful on all of these issues. So each of you in the room have these on paper. People watching from home will be able to follow along. But what I want to do is run through, not run, actually, I really want to take time and go through each of these. So any questions, concerns, advice before we launch on this? I just want to make sure I'm pausing often enough that, okay, all right. Each year, each of the 4 years of this commission, we come in with some version of an omnibus bill. And an omnibus is kind of throwing all the stuff in that kind of isn't big enough or controversial enough necessarily to merit their own bill, but as a package is really important, and it's a lot of stuff. So that was what was, and that is what we brought this year with Senate Bill 633, House Bill 1105. And we have someone else who has just joined us. Why don't you come on and say a quick hello? Walt, why don't you just let let them have access.
Partners.
Nice to have you here. Thank you, Rob. If you'd like to sit in Tiffany's seat here, unless she comes, or Delegate Hill's, either way, so you can be at the table and see the video and stuff. Okay, so some of these bills were sponsored by Delegate Krebs, some by Delegate Hill, and some by other delegates, and so we'll go through these. So this year's omnibus bill had 9 components, and this first part is the way we brought the bill in. So I'm going to run through this, and again, for people who are listening, I want to make sure that I am speaking it as well as for Cecilia Warren and anyone else who will have a challenge reading it. So the first piece was about 911 cybersecurity and making sure that there are consequences for 911 centers that don't keep their systems upgraded. A big thing that got a lot of conversation is, again, authorizing our local counties to make their own decisions about their local fees, the local portion of the fees. We don't want, I mean, Scott Roper just said that Dorchester County is coming in and raising their fee. Dorchester County, as Anna Sierra knows, has always been my poster child because they were getting 11% of the cost of their 911 center through the local portion of the 911 fee. When counties don't have that funding available, it comes from the same budget that pays for their schools, that pay for roads, pays for human services, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. People believe that when they pay a 911 fee, that that's covering the cost of 911 services, and it does not. So local control, local authority, and I suspect that Mr. Canale will add on to that when we moved on a little bit. We want more information from the comptroller, the current one, and the successor comptroller. We want to make sure that we are getting the right amount of money that is being collected from subscribers and then remitted to the 911 board for distribution to our counties. New 911 board positions. With the departure of Chair Myers, it occurred to this commission that we didn't have a vice chair. And if he wanted to travel, or God forbid, they had an illness or something, there would be a lack of leadership. So we made the system more fluid and a better succession plan. Susan, if you could scroll down, please. Reclassification has been done in a number of other states. It's 9 states, and it is mostly about respect, frankly. It doesn't require counties to make any changes, but it does reclassify the courageous women and men under the headsets as first responders, which is a big deal because they are our first responders. And it was Vice Chair Souter who helped educate me about that, and that is their right title. And he's the one who named them 911 specialists, and that's what they are. Implicit bias training has been an ongoing issue after the murders of Freddie Gray and George Floyd and too many others. We need to make sure that 911 is not a source of any other discrimination than is experienced every day by too many people. And so providing training. The bill came in as annually. You'll see that that was modified. Occupational wellness, we want to make sure, and I want to thank Shar Flaherty, the chair of the Staffing and Training Subcommittee, and everyone on that subcommittee. We want to make sure that our 911 specialists have direct access to mental health care. You don't have to tell your boss that you're struggling, no stigma, no embarrassment, no challenges, that you just get to, whoops. Did we just lose video?
We're having some technical difficulties on showing the video.
Okay.
We can keep on keeping on.
Let's keep on keeping on.
Cool.
Okay. So hopefully that'll, okay. Occupational wellness, so mental health care being available to our 911 specialists. Moving on, it is astonishing to me as we have so many vacancies in our 911 specialist positions. We have trouble recruiting, training and retaining, and part of that is because we don't pay them enough. So we can give them a good title, we can give them tax credits, we can give them great training, we can thank them all the time and recognize them, we can reclassify them, but frankly, they have financial needs and they have to be paid more. And I had learned that there may be some counties that were paying their 911 specialists minimum wage. And if you can work at the local fast food restaurant and get paid that or more and not go home with the trauma and the drama every night of what you hear in your headsets, I mean, it's no wonder that we have vacancies. So making it very clear, should not be minimum wage and should be commensurate with the demands of the job. And the last thing was just talking about working with the MDEM, Maryland Department of Emergency Management, to make sure that vacancies are filled in an efficient manner through the governor's office and others. I just invoked your name, Mr. Secretary. So that's the way the bill came in, the 9 components. Susan, if you could move down. So there were amendments. The Senate, we debated it. The local funding component was the piece that got people's attention on the floor, and it was unfortunately more of a partisan vote than I would have hoped, and it was because of that. But the House did make some changes, but we were able to defeat a lot of the changes that would have been most harmful to the bill and to our 911 center's work. I want to give a really enthusiastic shout out to Delegate Hill, who was really effective at fighting back some of the proposed amendments and coming out with a very strong bill that then the Senate took the amendments as we were running out of time. So implicit bias training, I said that it came in as annual. The House decided that once every 4 years seemed to save money, save time, and make common sense and give people the education they need, but not every year. The biggest thing they added was a report, and it'll come to my committee and the House Cross-File Committee that deals with these issues. And they wanted a lot of details on funding, on the formula, on, you can scroll down, Susan, thank you, about challenges with people getting their 911 calls answered, the pivot to next-gen 911 cybersecurity, as well as, and some of this was good, because frankly, when we get a legislative report that says, oh yeah, we're having problems staffing our 911 centers and we have huge vacancy rates, that is going to be a wake-up call, and that's going to enable me or others to really stay on top of this and continue to make the case. So again, staffing, training, workers' comp, and Senator Riley already talked about that. We'll get to that in a little bit. Again, update on the audits to the degree that we can share that information because that's confidential, and then outages. A key concept that this commission has discussed is, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but 911, 988, the suicide hotline, 211, and hopefully 311. So all of that is going to be in a report. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think it's going to be in our good interest to do that. So let me pause on that. That is the bill that passed the Senate and the House, and that is with the governor right now, waiting his either signature or veto, which really we don't expect, and dreadfully hope is not the case, or letting it pass without a signature and letting it become law that way. So that is the bill that is in front of him and all that that would allow. So I'd like to, did we just lose Kevin Canale? Okay, so I'd like to call on anyone who wants to speak to this bill. Any questions or comments about this bill? Secretary Strickland, do you want to say anything? Okay, Sharp? Anyone else? Yes, Tony Rose.
I have I guess a procedural question. When can we expect to see these new laws incorporated into the public safety articles so that they're all in one place?
Great question. So assuming, and I'm going to knock wood here, assuming that this becomes law, Abby, help me, October? October 1st is when this will be implemented and go into law, and all of these components would be activated. And that would be Mr. Markey, Mr. Roper, and others helping make sure that that all goes smoothly. And Secretary Strickland and Ms. Sierra. I mean, so there are a lot of players in all of this to make sure it goes smoothly. And then the Comptroller's Office and others that are referenced here. Nikki, Josh, anything you'd add? Okay. All right, so that is the bill that passed, and those are the components. Yeah, Susan, you're not off the hook yet. Now we're going to go to the next bills. So she was trying to slink out here. Okay, back to her seat. So that was the one that passed. Now, there were different outcomes, and I'm going to start with the swatting bill. So for those who may be watching and don't know what swatting is, why don't I ask Mr. Cunningham, why don't you talk about what swatting is and why it's important, the current status, and then we'll go into the bill.
So in general, swatting is placing calls for emergency services, whether that's to 911, law enforcement, fire, EMS, to either incriminate somebody that is innocent. This kind of got its name from the gaming world, where people would place phone calls against somebody to get a leg up on their game that they were playing online, to get revenge against somebody. So it's basically making false statements, making false calls, wasting resources of the emergency services, law, fire, EMS, but also all the criminal proceedings that may occur against that individual. So it's a large, I guess, sum of time wasted for making a false report. The current laws for false reporting or 911 abuse are not, do not specifically address these particular incidents and the details of it. So the purpose of this was to increase fines, increase penalties to discourage that happening. Sometimes there are injuries that occur as a result of that response. Law enforcement making entry into a house with the knowledge, the information that was given to them, false information, but yet damage occurs to buildings, people, and such. So hopefully I covered that good enough.
That's great, and I know that Senator Riley wants to speak to this too.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. One of the main concerns for me is the vulnerability of innocent citizens who are sitting in their home or in their bed in the middle of the night, and someone breaks in because the swatting says injured person, active shooter, something of that nature. And across the United States, we have had multiple issues of innocent citizens being terrorized by law enforcement or EMS or whoever, trying to do their job as best they can, and an innocent family is terrorized. So the discouragement is important, but at the same time, if we can find out who they are and hold them accountable, it's generally an issue of revenge, or that they don't like their neighbor, or they're trying to terrorize someone. So extremely important issue, and would like us to make sure that we continue moving this bill forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I can say that it has also been done with racial intent, too. And it can be, you know, the black guy who lives next door to me just murdered his wife. And so SWAT teams come out, guns drawn, ready to engage in an active shooter, and the couple is sitting there watching TV. And literally, as Randy Cunningham said, like, people could die. So it's really important. There has to be disincentive. So running through this bill, it has been heard. We've never had any opposition to this bill. Everybody understands that we need, as Randy said, higher penalties and fines, and we have to protect innocent residents, innocent Marylanders, as Senator Riley said. So we have brought this bill. Here's the, instead of passing the bill, they passed another bill instead, and it is going to create a work group. Now, the good thing about that is that it's going to be short-term, and we're going to come back with buy-in. Rather than 2 legislators, 2 senators, and 2 delegates, which is the way it would normally be, usually 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, Senator Waldstreicher made it 3, and the assumption is that I would be the 3rd so that I can continue my voice on behalf of the commission and help with that work group and that conversation. So you'll see on here the legislation did not pass. Delegate Hill got it out of the House, but the Senate just didn't want to move it. And so a task force, a work group, as you see, the members are going to include 3 senators, 3 delegates, the public defender, the chair of the Anti-Defamation League, or the chair's designee, so that's about the racial or anti-Semitic component, the Maryland Chiefs of Police, the Maryland Sheriffs, the Maryland State's Attorney, and the NAACP president. So those are going to be the people in the room, and I think that is well-intentioned and thoughtful, and with Senator Waldstreicher's leadership, and he is the vice chair of the committee, of the Judicial Proceedings Committee. So he is bought in, and so I think in January we will have thoughtful legislation that we will be able to move this forward. So are there questions about that? Yes, Mr. Roper.
It's not a question, but it's more of a comment. The task force doesn't include any representation from the 911 community that actually takes the swatting calls, and we hope that the task force does, that the chair and the staff from the Attorney General's office does reach out to the PSAP community to get their input for any recommendations and any legislation that may come out of this.
Thank you. Agreed. This was a little bit presented as a done deal, and sometimes the legislative process just works, especially towards the end, it just works rapidly. And so this was the group that was put together, and there was consensus around that. So I totally agree with you. Are there other comments or questions? Yes, Walt.
Walt Kaplan, I just had a quick question. You expressed that there was no opposition to it. Is there any reasoning that's given as to why something like this happens? And I understand there may not be, but I just thought it might be helpful because this happens with a lot of legislation.
If I could answer that question with certainty, I would be like the most, brilliant and effective legislator ever. Kevin, do you want to speak to that? And then I'll tell you what I would say.
I think that part of it has to do with criminal penalties in the bill. That's a controversial issue generally. So while there may not have been opposition, overt opposition, I think there was some trepidation to include new kinds of criminal penalties. And I also think that that committee was busy and they didn't get to the bill. So I don't think there was any nefarious intent by the committee or its chair. I just think that there are some heavy issues generally with criminal sentencing, and the session gets crazy, and committees, as you know, Senator Kagan, there's a lot of bills. So I think that's probably it.
Last year, they had the justice reform, and this year they had some juvenile justice. They always have big bills, and so I echo Kevin Canale's comments. But I think a work group is a victory, because I think we will come back with all the right people and buy-in by the vice chair, and therefore hopefully by the chair, and there will be consensus. And whether it's our bill or something close to it or whatever, it will come back, and I suspect it will pass next year. Other comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Vice Chair.
Madam Chair, and for those that spoke about the presence or the absence of a 911 specialist on this work group, a lot of names up there, a lot of fancy titles, but the reality is, as we all know in this room, that the 911 specialist is that proverbial point of the spear when it comes to issues like this. And I would hope through whomever, and I'll leave it to you, Madam Chair, to see what might be done, that in some way, somewhere along this process of this work group, that they are receptive to hearing the point of view, and perhaps even in their questioning session, of that person that is on the front end of every 911 call that occurs. And that is that person that has these immense challenges in deciphering exactly what is going on in a given situation, many times making the right call, sometimes not making the right call, but making the right call predicated upon what they heard. So their voices, it cannot be stymied. It may not be here as a bullet, but it should be in some way part of the dialogue.
So what I'd like is a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I did want to mention, to the point that 911 actually, of course, is a very interested party in swing, but this bill talks about what are the penalties if you are caught doing it, not necessarily the technical parts of it. And I wanted to bring that in case there are people watching or just for general purposes. The Federal Communications Commission, Commissioner Chairwoman Rosenworcel and David Firth and the whole team at FCC have been working with the industry to promote a standard called STIR Shaken, which is Secure Telephone Identity Revisited. Wow. And signature-based handling of asserted information using tokens. The simple version of that is, can I know that this phone is legitimately calling from this location and not spoof the calls to the point that the senator and others have made here. So I think the key part for us is this is about how do we prosecute someone who does it? Is that a deterrent for the people that are doing it? I think is a separate but very important question. If you set a penalty and it doesn't deter the behavior, how effective is that? And that we in the 911 community really need to talk about how do we prevent it from coming into the centers, which is the technology piece. So I wanted to link those two as part of the effort. Not that the bill isn't necessary, not that we shouldn't have impact statements, which I think is what Mr. Souder brought, but just that it is a broader issue and that we have a part that we own, the call process part of it with our carriers.
Thank you, Jack. So our work concludes, this mission officially, legally, legislatively expires on June 30th, which gives us a little bit more time. I would like to suggest, and I'm going to go through this on each of the bills that we're going through, I'm going to want a motion, I'm going to want a conversation, amendments, and then Mission Critical and I and anyone else who wants to be a part of it will end up drafting a statement of something. And I would like this commission to live on with your credibility and your expertise in this way as weighing in. So based on what Mr. Roper said, what Mr. Stouder said, Mr. Canale, Mr. Markey, I mean, I totally agree. It wasn't possible to put it in the legislation, and I think, Jack, what you just said is important. So I wonder whether this body might want to have a motion endorsing the work group, endorsing the work, being eager to see what comes back, because we think this is really an important issue, as Mr. Cunningham said, and encouraging consultation or inclusion by 911 center representatives. And so what I'd like, so first off, does that seem like a good idea? I'm just going to go body language here. Am I getting nods? Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing lots of nods and thumbs up. So do we want to say a specific number? A 911 center director? Do we want to say 2 from a big county, a small county? Do we want Kevin, the ECC, the Emergency Communications Committee? Do we want the 911 board? Do we want the secretary of the Maryland Department of Emergency Management or his designee? Like, who makes sense and that we want to recommend? I'd like to hear your views. So should I toss it to the secretary first? Do you have thoughts? Do you want to be, should MDEM be a part of this or not? Let's start with that.
No, I think actually with the limited number of people that would be involved with it, it would make more sense that there be someone directly from the 911 community, whether that be someone off of the 911 board or someone that MACA may nominate, but we would be there to support them.
Okay, Kevin, thoughts?
So, yeah, I agree that we should definitely have representation directly from our 911 community. I can go back and talk. I can't make the decision. I would say that the ECC would make sense. And so I feel comfortable endorsing that motion that we should have someone appointed from the Emergency Communications Committee within the MACO Emergency Management Affiliate.
And just to clarify, all 24 counties' 911 centers are represented on the ECC, the Emergency Communications Commission. Are those of you who come from our 911 centers, are you okay with that as a representative, as a voice? Good, good, okay. All right, so could we get a motion, please, to that effect? From anyone? Okay, is there a second?
Souter.
Okay. Canali, Souter, and Darrell as a third, as an enthusiastic third. So the motion, Nikki and Josh, should be endorsing the work group, important work, really hopeful that there's going to be thoughtful legislation, I mean, not these words, obviously, in January of 2023, and that we think it's vitally important that the experience and expertise of the 911 community be heard and incorporated, considered, whatever words seem right. And our recommendation would be that either one or two members of the Emergency Communications Committee, the ECC, under MACO, the Maryland Association of Counties, would be invited or included at all meetings of this work group. Does that capture anything missing that you want to add to that? Yes, Bardana.
Whoops. That's okay. I think that you had said something about having a report back. Is that going to be included in the motion?
So a work group or task force like ours, you know, we end up with a report. They don't generally look like this. They're either not that fancy or not that long. So I would expect that it could be a brief, it could be 2 or 3 pages. I don't have any idea. And then presumably would be a draft bill that would be sponsored in the Senate and in the House by some of the members. And Senator Waldstreicher and I would work together on that as co-sponsors and anyone else who wanted to. Thank you for the question. Other questions or comments about the bill that is the motion that is on the floor? Seeing none. We don't have our green, yellow, red cards. That's so sad. Okay, so let's do hands raised, and I guess the camera can't go around, but I will have to report it. So, and I'm not worried about whether you have a vote or don't have a vote. So if you're in the room, I am okay with just voting. And if it gets close or something, then we'll have to figure that out. But all those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Anyone opposed to this motion, raise your hand. If you would like to be marked as abstaining, please raise your hand. Okay, the vote is unanimous for this issue. Let's move forward. Thank you. The next issue, Susan, we're going to scroll down some. All right, now, TDOS, DDoS. We used to have TDOS, DDoS, and swatting all in the same bill. I think that was complicated. We came in with that a year or two in, and that is about the telephone denial of service, making call, or jamming the phone lines digitally so that someone else with a legitimate emergency, grandma's having a heart attack, my house is on fire, I was just robbed, they're not able to get through because the lines are jammed by somebody who thinks that's cute and funny, or an actor with bad intent, either domestically or internationally. It is not against the law in Maryland right now to do that, which is insane. We have brought this forward to the General Assembly. This year we had motion, but and I will tell about that. But I'm going to again toss this to Randy Cunningham, and with any assist by Josh Jack. And before you start, Randy, I just want to give a shout out to Bill Ferretti, who is watching online, and I appreciate that Randy mentioned him by name earlier, the former chair of the Technology and Cyber Subcommittee, who has really brought expertise and savvy on tech issues like this one. So, and he's watching online, so yay, Bill, we appreciate you. Okay, Randy, please talk about what TDOS, DDoS is and why it's important, then we'll talk about the bill.
So TDOS, DDoS, telephone denial server, service, or distributed denial of service, happens a lot of times. You hear about it, not in those words, but a certain website is no longer accessible. www.whatever.com is down due to a DDoS attack, or it happens a lot with businesses where they flood the phone lines with phone calls and you're not able to get through to that business. So just imagine if you're flooding the 911 center with phone calls that basically ring, and then as soon as the 911 specialist picks up, it disconnects, but it does that tenfold, hundredfold, thousandfold over and over again. The people with the real emergencies are not able to get through. Same with distributed denial of service, which is more of a data type driven thing, where you hear the www is not working. Text messaging, of course, like mentioned previously, you could text 911 now. Again, if they're flooding the data lines with information or trying to hack into your system, again, that text message may not come through. Information getting back out to responders, we may have trouble getting that out to responders, so they are not getting the information that they need to respond to your emergency. So you kind of see the progression that it takes. So again, not currently against the law, no penalties in place, other than some very vague 911 abuse laws out there. We're basically at the mercy of stopping it. So.
Josh, do you want to add anything? You're good. Okay. Bill Ferretti was emailing me, so I just want to make sure that we had left something out. I'm checking on that. So this year, the Judicial Proceedings Committee did move the bill. And I'm going to ask, so they amended it in a way that we didn't love, frankly. And the question was, is half a loaf better than no loaf? And frankly, it kind of is, because at least let's get it in the law books and let's start the conversation. And so it was passed. Abby, did it pass the Senate unanimously?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, it was pretty close. If it wasn't unanimous, it was pretty close, and there was no debate on the floor. So what I'd like to have the conversation, Randy, is it you or Josh who's going to talk about, because what we have to figure out is for next year, do we bring back, does this commission believe we should bring back half a loaf and just get it through and bring it early enough so that it moves and we can be done, or at least done with for now, because something is better than nothing? Or do we work on education outreach and bring back either the same bill or a modified version of the bill and see whether we can get something more comprehensive? So Randy, do you want to go first, or Josh, or Walt? Do you look like you might have something? No? Okay. Go ahead. Okay, all right, well, let's, Randy?
So I'm confused. How we want to separate this and the swatting? Is that the?
So swatting is its own bill and has the
Right.
work group, and we've already taken had a motion and stuff on that passed unanimously. This was a different bill, Senate Bill 83. It did not have a cross-file, a House cross-file, and it did pass the Senate. It just didn't move in the House in time before adjournment. Don't know why, because it did pass. Abby, did you pull up the numbers?
It was unanimous.
It was unanimous, that's what I thought. So don't know why a unanimous public safety bill didn't move in the House, but again, these things happen. I don't know if you've got the date in front of you, Abby. It was near-ish by the time it got over to the House, near-ish the end. Yes, Josh?
And the edits to the bill, was it done in the Senate? Is that correct?
The amendments were done by the Senate, in the Senate, and then the bill passed unanimously out of the Senate, and it went to the House, where it did not move out of committee, correct, Abby? Okay.
So the edits that were made were basically removed all of the content that was added, which basically made the bill irrelevant at that point, the intent. And I think it just added public safety answering point to the existing verbiage. And I think that's why it was not moved any further. And I believe it was the penalties that were removed. And then what was left was the aggregated amount of $10,000, and how does one come up with that number in a PSAP environment? So my recommendation would be to somehow, come together and decide, why was that struck? What was the reason behind it? And then move forward with some sort of penalty that would be acceptable.
Thank you very much. Could you move that screen a little bit farther down, because usually we have a few more comments about the bill and why and how. Okay, so my only observation is, one of the questions is, why did a bill that was unopposed not move forward? And why does a bill that is passed unanimously in one chamber doesn't move? Could have been politics, could have been last-minute pressures, could have been held hostage by the House because of other unrelated issues. It's the only recommendation that we have on these things, as been successful in the past, is to have it cross-filed, pre-filed, as the good senator has done on the vast majority of her bills, so that both bills go through both houses around the same time. And oftentimes there's negotiation between both houses to achieve compromise, but something does move forward. So again, would strongly recommend the resubmission of this bill in a cross-filed manner. I don't know if we want to use the amended version or give it the new, and remember, I'm anticipating of the 47 senators and 141 delegates, there will probably be a 15 to 20% turnover. So folks who may have had a entrenched opposition previously may not be coming back to evaluate. So again, make the determination at the committee level to accept the amendment, to come back to the original, but more importantly, cross-file. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're totally right. This one, I think, was the only 911 commission-related bill that did not get a cross-file, and Delegate Krebs was supposed to carry it, but there was a little bit of cross-communication, and so there wasn't one. But yes, so pre-file, cross-file. So pre-file, it has to go in this fall, early in an election year. I suspect it's later than other times, but, and then it gets a really early hearing, and often, not always, early action. Cross-files when there's a Senate bill and a House bill, which I totally agree, it's important that we will have that next year. So the question that I have, Walt first, but then the question is whether we come back with version A, which is what we came with this year, version B, which is what passed the Senate unanimously, or version C, some amalgam or some modification, some other version. And if anyone has any sort of specific ideas about that, Walt, please.
Sure, Walt Kaplan. Madam Chair, just a couple of quick thoughts. One is version B seems almost irrelevant, to be honest. So I would say version A is definitely, in my opinion, the way to go. But my question is this: I don't know if it's feasible, but is there value in requesting that this be considered alongside the swatting with the group that's being assembled? And maybe it's not possible, I don't know how those rules work, but it seems to me, especially since you're dealing with criminal penalties again, that, while they're not exactly, there is some similarities, and I think it might be worth considering.
That's kind of a cool idea, actually. Kevin, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes some sense. I'm not sure. I think you can certainly make that pitch to the work group that's considering the other piece, but it's along the same lines, and I think it's in the same ballpark for sure.
So it seems to me that we could make that suggestion or request, but it's not in the bill, it's not in the law that be part of it. And I think something that stymied people in the past, when we brought swatting and TDOS, DDoS in the same bill, it was just kind of a lot of stuff. And I think it was complicated and it didn't move for that reason. So I think we still want to keep them as two separate bills, two separate issues, but your idea of they're kind of first cousins, so if we sort of just ask whether they can spend a little bit of time on that, I think that's actually a really good idea. So I'd like to hear other thoughts on version A, version B, or some other version C. And if it goes to this work group, and if they're willing to spend any time, maybe they can help us come up with a craft of version C. Thoughts? Yeah, Ed?
To my 911 experts, under the second bullet, the bill was amended. If the aggregate amount of the loss, can anybody define that definition?
That was the problem with the bill. That's precisely the right question. Yes. So how do you define a life? How do you define, grandma died because they couldn't get through to 911?
Madam Chair, so you're saying it's not a loss to the PSAP, it's a loss to a person who couldn't get through?
The house burned down because the 911 center was jammed. Tony?
Well,
there may also be a fiscal note attached to the loss of service, right? The inability to receive the calls, process them, and the impacts on law enforcement and EMS and fire associated with that. The cost, there's going to be a huge cost associated with cybersecurity experts coming in to help you unravel this mess as well. So there will be a way to identify some costs at the 911 center level, I would think.
Bill Ferretti, who we have invoked multiple times, has said yes to Walt's idea and yes for version C, which has come up with craft a new concept, because this, who was it who said, kind of this doesn't do kind of what we had hoped. It's good that Walt, thank you, that it puts it in the law books, and that's not nothing, but it really, as Senator Riley said, like, how do you quantify my house burned down, or the battering continued, or I don't know how you make that a number. So, okay, so let's start to move on this then. So I'd like a motion. My suggestion of the motion that might make sense is that we ask to be included in the work group, or we ask them after they're done with their swatting work, that we ask that they look at and consider TDOS, DDoS, that we look at sort of a version C, a new version that is not what we came in with and not what the Senate reported out, which really doesn't do the job, and that be considered and proposed in 2023. Is that is that accurate or comprehensive for what we've talked about? Is there anyone, Tony, go ahead. Why don't you start with a motion that makes sense to you?
Just additional narrative, right? Would we better use our time and energies answering the question, because it seems like the big question here is how do you quantify this loss, right? And rather than try to restructure this bill and come up with a C version of it, would we not be better using our time identifying how we quantify that? How do we come up with that $10,000 figure? Because it's going to cost money to clean it up, to rectify it, to get experts in there, to get help, to help shut this thing down and get back and start. There's going to be a fiscal note attached to the process of cleaning up a DDoS, right? So it should be, I think it's just a matter of clarifying it for those outside of the 911 center so that they understand what the process is and understand the fiscal note.
And just clarify, if you would, Tony, when you say cleaning up at a 911 center, so someone has jammed all the phone lines or jammed it digitally. What does cleaning up look like, and why is that expensive? If you can educate all of us and anyone watching.
Somebody has to identify where the problem's coming from. How is how are they getting into the network, right, to the infrastructure? What type of mechanism, what type of bot are they using to shut the system down? How are they overwhelming it? Is there a workaround? Is there some way for us to reroute these calls to another network and bring them in that way? Do we have to send them to another 911 center? What is it that we're going to do to restore service as quickly as possible? Or is this, in fact, a malicious assault on the center, in which case there's maybe some ransom associated with it?
We haven't said the word ransomware. Thank you. Charles County is very lucky to have you there. Thank you. Yeah, Randy.
Just not that the internet tells the truth, but, a quick search, $300,000 per hour, $40,000 per hour, 120,000 per incident. That's just some of the, headlines you get. I think the other important thing is it doesn't matter the loss. It doesn't matter the amount. Someone has intentionally tried to disable, take down a critical service to the community, to the people that we serve 911 to. That, to me, is yes, there is a loss of some amount that someone can put a label on it, but it's the intentional attack that needs to be brought forth, I believe.
Thank you for those numbers, Randy. That's a lot, and that's without ransomware. That's the actual cost of the repair. So could I get a motion? Tony, do you want to make the motion? And Mr. Secretary, do you want to say anything before we start with the motion?
No, I'm tracking very well with what's being said.
Good.
Particular happened in the state, we're well aware of the cost.
Tony?
My motion would be to pass this bill on to the task force that's looking at swatting, and ask them to spend some time on this and see if they have some suggestions on that. But I believe that we need to spend some time identifying the costs associated with that, with a DDoS attack, so that we clarify that for the legislators, and submit that same bill again for consideration with additional explanation.
Just a really quick comment, Madam Chair. I think in a lot of ways it has the same threats to life safety, although not necessarily as glamorous as swatting. So I just would want to make sure as we pass this along that they're made aware that when you're preventing a telecommunicator from doing their job, you're potentially impacting life safety. What? 911, oh, sorry.
That's okay. We don't want to call them telecommunicators in Maryland. They are infinitely more than that. Jack, is that a hand up? Go ahead.
Similar to the last bill, this is late in the process. This is penalize someone we've caught, which is important, or try to deter people from ever attempting to interfere with 911, which is absolutely a laudable goal. I just wanted to call attention, Mr. Souter, in a role other than vice chair here, was a participant along with Mr. Jack, Dan Leary from T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon Wireless, discussing this subject within the last week under the board, the Maryland 911 Board's purview, and the carriers recognize this as a challenge, TDOS and DDoS, but under federal law, they're required to pass on calls to 911 centers that are presented to them for 911 purposes. So I think part of this discussion doesn't necessarily need to be within the bill, but just from an awareness perspective is that Maryland is seeking to do legislatively what can be done, but ultimately this needs to be resolved at the carrier level. If a carrier is presented a call to be routed to a 911 center, they're going to route it to a 911 center. At the point that we determine that Frederick had a recent experience in October last year. We had 3,000 calls from one number that hopped between carriers. But the ability to have that call not reach the center, not have that impact on that, not dispatch for a trouble breathing, not dispatch for a fire, is a different problem, and it's a problem that the carriers feel the burden of, but they have federal requirements that they must meet to pass those calls on. So I don't want to lose track of penalize and deter, yes, but that's not sufficient. And that if we can take a statement out of here to raise the advocacy that Maryland's 911 community is trying to deal with this problem with the tools that we have, but the FCC really needs to, help us work on this issue so we can prevent the impact. Our goal is not the impact. To Secretary Strickland's comment, mitigation, our goal is to reduce impacts by keeping people from interfering with 911.
Yes.
Or penalizing those who do, but.
I want to move forward with this, but Abby Snyder has thoughts she'd like to share.
I think it's really important, especially the numbers that you all looked up, the $30,000, the $40,000. And I think, if you're going to ask the work group to work on this, make sure that they're aware of all of that information to help them better structure it. But I think at the end of the day, the legislation that you want to bring forward is less, how much does it cost when my friend loses their life because their phone number couldn't come through, and back to kind of the original structure of the bill as the goal, with maybe different penalties associated with that. But it's going to be really hard to put a price tag on these things, even knowing some of the costs. And so I think maybe in your motion, you might want to include that version C is similarly structured off of the original bill.
So I want to just do a time check really quickly. It's 11:30. The plan was that we would adjourn for lunch at noon, and we have 3 more bills and wrap up stuff. So with that, Mr. Vice Chair, so.
I like to associate myself with the comments made by Abby. As we know, and has been said a couple of times, those folks that make up these committees into the future may be a different set of folks than we are familiar with. And to some degree, I think we owe it to ourselves and owe it to them to provide to them the necessary background so that they go into these discussions and negotiations understanding the relevance and how this all ties together, rather than just present them some language that they then have to sort through and try to make sense of, and maybe don't make the right connection to. So thank you, Abby.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Abby said, what Walt said. I think everyone, Senator Riley and Randy and Bill Ferretti in absentia. So we do have a motion on the floor with a tweak, and Mission Critical, you guys are great at pulling this together. But basically, we're endorsing a version C. We're asking for the work group to look at this. We're going to give them some numbers of the implications with the specific examples from Frederick and others, the Department of Health maybe and others, and then incorporating Abby's thoughts as to the urgency, importance, and hoping that we can get back to a little bit more of a version A, but maybe as tweaked in a way that will make it viable legislatively. So, Tony.
I don't want to I don't want to derail this conversation, but it occurs to me, and a colleague reminded me that maybe the best thing to do with this bill, and I don't know from a civil or legal perspective whether dollars need to be associated with this, but from a 911 center perspective, as was stated earlier, 911 is a core service of government, right? This, Steve, we have said 100 times, that is the most sacred relationship that government has with its people, right, is 911, that maybe the bill stands simply on the fact that somebody maliciously tried to negatively impact that service. Whether there's a dollar loss, a life lost, doesn't matter. The fact is they maliciously tried to interfere with that process.
I would like to make sure that that's incorporated into probably the first part of the motion.
Yes.
And set the stage for making the argument of, this is a big damn deal. Wayne?
Or whether it's a felony, I mean, it should be a felony, no option for misdemeanor. It's not something that's done accidentally. It's premeditated, it's planned, and it takes time, it takes expertise, it takes energy. So it's not something that should be a misdemeanor at this point. It just should be a felony. The simple act of it.
Oh, I have totally, sorry, Sue, please.
Yeah, to echo what Tony said, because I was thinking as several people were speaking, one, I wanted to second the motion, but it's an attack on public safety's critical infrastructure. That stands alone. And that's what just kept coming through my head, was this is an attack on public safety's critical infrastructure.
Okay. Nikki, Josh, you good? Capturing all of this? Yep.
Just a quick comment, I'm looking at this from another view, but there's equipment out there where somebody may unintentionally, could have built something to robo-dial a 911 center, an alarm system, just as an example. So I suggest that this committee look at, devices now that are able to do that, or future technology that are able to robo-dial or TDOS a 911 center, unintentionally as well.
I think, and I'm not looking at the bill now, I think we have the word maliciously in the current legislation. So if someone butt dials 911 10 times, just whether that's dementia, whether that's, who knows? But we certainly don't want to throw folks in jail because they're not, high tech or something. Mr. Vice Chair, and then I'd like to take a vote and move on.
Yes, one more thing. We mentioned public safety infrastructure, and indeed it is, but more precisely, it's 911 public safety infrastructure. And I think it's very important and incumbent upon this committee to continue to push forward the 911. It is the most sacred, most recognized number in the United States of America. It is our badge of courage. It is our label, it is our brand, and we should not be ashamed to do that as we associate with public safety as well.
I'd like to take a vote then, and again, I realize that these are not precise motions the way we normally would in a formal report. We will massage them and send them out for email for final approval, but if we can get sort of the sense of the commission, and I'd like us to be sort of close in making sure that we're aligned. So with that, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hands. All those opposed to the motion, please raise your hands. And you are scratching your head, right, Julia? Okay. And anyone who would like to abstain? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Thank you, Susan. The next bill, and apparently we do not have video, which is disappointing, so that is another reason why I'm trying to do the audio as well. So Senate Bill 281, House Bill 308 was a bill that I sponsored with Delegate Brooke Learman, and it's about the comptroller. And I want to thank Tony Rose and others who brought this issue to my attention, which then got brought to the comptroller's attention, or to the commission's attention, and that was about enormous delays in payment to our vendors. And whether it's small business, whether it's a nonprofit, or whether it's a vendor that's providing critical service to the 911 centers in our state, there was an enormous delay and a total lack of transparency. Delegate Learman and I brought this bill with the commission's endorsement, asking for a procurement and payment portal. And ultimately, we had really strong hearings on both sides. We worked with the Department of Information Technology, the Department of General Services, the Comptroller's Office, and others. At the 11th hour, the Comptroller sent us a 5-page letter sort of saying, yeah, we're kind of doing it. We're going to do this. And I don't want to be too political about this, but it was interesting after having been the comptroller for so many years that it took this legislation to finally get this issue addressed. Our next comptroller will ensure that it is higher tech and more comprehensive. And so because they were working on it, we withdrew the bill. And so in my view, I don't think we need to take further action. We could certainly, as a commission, just commend the movement, and we really hope that this happens and that there's a comprehensive procurement and payment portal that is established and accessible to the public and certainly to our vendors and our 911 center directors if there are questions or problems. Happy to take that motion or happy to just move on. Thoughts? I'm going to toss it to Tony since you're the one who first brought the issue.
I think it's safe to move on. I don't see that a motion is required here, right? It seems like it's going to be resolved.
Is everybody good with that? Anyone dissent? Anyone want to get in writing on that? Okay, let's move on then, and we just say hallelujah, and we got it done, and I think we take this one as a victory, that this bill, I think, did make the difference and kind of shame him into doing that, finally. Senator Riley already flagged this one, and this was a heartbreak, one of the heartbreaks of this session, workers' compensation. Shar, why don't you start, and then I'm going to call on Sue Greentree briefly, then we'll talk about the bill itself. But Sue, Shar, why don't you just give the background, please?
This was near and dear to all of our hearts, that a part of the subcommittee. Every day, a 911 specialist deals with a variety of calls, ranging from a cat in a tree to a life-saving effort. Each of these incidents are indelibly marked on the 911 specialists' minds and hearts, and this has an impact on each 911 specialist. And this legislation was intended to recognize this post-traumatic stress disorder trauma and to move forward with it as a presumption. And I think in my opinion, I think it's worth trying again next year.
Thank you, Shar, and I want to give a really special shout out to those who testified and told personal stories during this hearing. Senator Riley had stories that he shared because his son-in-law was for a while under the headset, and he had stories of how challenging that job is. Captain Robert Phillips, who told stories about his wife who had been under the headset and how it has changed her and frankly sort of debilitated her, that she used to be this outgoing party person and very extroverted, and now she barely will leave the home. And she just came home one day, and I'm not sharing private conversations. This was what he shared in the hearing. But one day she came home and she just sat down in the middle of the living room and just started sobbing and like, I can't go back, I can't go back. And Sharif Thomas from Montgomery County, a 911 specialist who's now on the 911 board, recent appointee, he shared some of his stories. And then also just incredibly powerful, our own Sue Greentree was a super effective witness. So Sue, do you want to share anything about this bill before we talk about the legislation?
I was disappointed that it didn't go through. I mean, I certainly felt like all of the testimony that was given was very compelling. I mean, you cannot help but be changed, and by doing that job. And for some people, it may happen in less years, for others more. But there are absolutely calls that anybody who's taken them, you live with them your whole life, and they change who you are. And your kids think that you're overprotective or whatever, and you tell them, Now, I'm just way too close. I know these things happen, so I definitely think that it needs another go-round.
Senator Riley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I missed the in-depth hearing and some of the backup information. Does this presumption of PTSD and other work-related problems, is this currently law for EMS folks?
Kevin, do you want to start with this? Do you want to?
There is no presumption currently for anyone in Maryland for PTSD.
If I can continue real quick. Thank you very much for that. I think this is a bigger issue than just our 911 experts under the headset. It's those folks who go to accident scenes, who go to murder scenes, who go to, terrible issues. This may be a wider issue for the body, and maybe that could also gather more support among the legislators. And the other issue is, I just don't think it's PTSD. As you were sharing, the Irishman I'm going to go to the wedding with in Ireland this month, overweight, high blood pressure, depression, marriage difficulties, all these are symptoms of working in the long hours, 12-hour shifts. All these are symptoms of the environment in which they sit, and with very little outside weather, sunlight. It's a very difficult work environment in itself, but I also think when we talk about especially EMS, maybe even the firefighters, but needs to be moved forward, very strongly supportive of this issue. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So let me do you want to speak to what Senator Riley said, or do you want me to, or are you going to go somewhere else?
Go ahead, and then I'll come back.
Okay, so one of the challenges that you all remember as commissioners was that we had to try to make this super, super, super narrow. And so it didn't cover obesity or diabetes or hypertension or heart disease or anything. It was just that which is unique to a 911 specialist. And yes, all of those are totally part of the job. One of the reasons that we felt like we could try to make this case was, unlike the police officer who gets to save the day by catching the bad guy, or the firefighter who gets to save the day by putting out the fire, or the paramedic who gets to save the day by saving grandma's life, the 911 specialist is powerless to do anything other than try to coach, and not to minimize, but to coach, to dispatch, to be in communication. And oftentimes, they don't get the mental and emotional satisfaction of the outcome. So they don't know whether the bad guy was caught, the fire was put out, or grandma was revived. And Tania, if you want to share anything in this. So that is an extra burden. And so they hear all the bad stuff, and they get none of the good stuff at the end. And that's what makes them different. What is challenging, based on what Kevin Canale said, is that there is a fear of a slippery slope. Well, if we're going to do it for 911 specialists, then we really have to do it for our police officers and our firefighters, and then what about our EMS people? And suddenly, they think this super narrow, 1,500 people, as Jack Markey said, that, oh my God, it's going to bankrupt every county, it's going to bankrupt the state, there are going to be millions of cases. We think it's really narrow, and it's just a slight balancing, maybe give a little bit of the presumption of the assumption that it's this job that made such a trauma in your life, that there will be a slippery slope, and either the same time or next year, the following year, that everyone else will want to come to the table. And that's where our challenge lies. Mr. Vice Chair.
A couple of things that I think are relevant. First of all, we talk, and in this room we know. So this comment is made for those not in this room. But in this room, we know that 911 centers are critically understaffed. And as I speak today, and we're in this room today, there are people that are mandatorily working overtime. Not optional, not I want to make an extra buck. They are forced, directed, you shall work overtime. Similarly, at the end of a 12-hour shift, often, frequently, the 911 specialist is told, you're not going home. You're held over. You have to work another 6 or 8 or 10 hours. And when you get done, you go out in the parking lot and you sleep in your car, and then you come back to work 4 or 5 hours later. This is asinine. There are other words that I could use, but I won't. This is asinine. And the pressure that you're under normally, compounded by some of these other factors, make this job just incredibly different. We have at our fingertips, which is to say our 911 specialist, through the technology that we utilize and this board funds, the ability to capture information that is extraordinary, way, way, way greater than any of our other public safety colleague partners, if you will. The impact of the job, the frequency of the calls, when I had to simply hold my head and say, I need a break. All of that is information at our fingertips that we don't capture today. We can capture, but we don't capture. So as we look forward and try to quantify what it is that we're trying to do within the legitimate, narrow confines that are crafted, I think we need to kind of look beyond the obvious, dig a little bit deeper, and see if we can't come up with statistics or whatever in the future that help us to educate and to see this bill be successful.
So I'd like to get a motion on the floor here.
Move to resubmit the same bill.
Same bill, says Senator Riley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Shar, Flaherty. Debate, conversation. Amendment to the bill. Everyone's good with bringing this in, this motion? Okay. We're going to take a vote. All those in favor of bringing this bill back as is, raise your hand. All those opposed? All those abstaining? For the record, the bill has passed unanimously with the abstention from Scott Roper, save for an abstention from Scott Roper. Thank you. This is in my heart. My staff and I did a post-session review, and we talked about our biggest disappointments. And I can tell you that I would say almost everyone had this one as their heartbreak, that we really wanted to do this for our courageous women and men under the headset. So let's see if we can get it done. Let's move forward with the last bill, which frankly was my heartbreak because I wanted workers' comp, but I really wanted 311. So I'd like to start by tossing this to Secretary Strickland, who was such a valuable and thoughtful partner in all of this. And just before we start, I just want to say that this was endorsed by the governor's office. This was a bipartisan bill that had no opposition, and it just makes me crazy. And some number of these gray hairs is from stuff like that, because it just makes me crazy. So, Mr. Secretary, why don't you start by doing the overview of the process and the substance? And also, I want to just say the names. Quentin Askew, who's the CEO of our 211 system. Bill Ferretti, again, just a critically important advocate on this issue and thought partner who came up with excellent visuals and FAQs, frequently asked questions, and really helped be the backbone for that. Brian Roberts, the head of the 311 system in Montgomery County. Tania, you were on some stuff, I think, on 311. There were others. Lisa Allen. Thank you, Lisa Allen. I'm trying to remember, there were other people that were also on a meeting or two or something and brought their expertise. So I really want to thank all of them and others that I'm just not remembering at the moment. Abby, I don't know who else I should give. Is that good? Okay. All right, Mr. Secretary, please.
Well, basically, there was a task force unofficially designated and met through the early part of last summer to explore exactly how a statewide 311 system could be established. And I really give a lot of credit to Bill for the technical expertise and back end of it all. And really, it would truly be a mirror to basically what the 911 system is in the state, other than it would not be the responsibility of a local jurisdiction to run and manage, but it would be a statewide capability made available to all of the local jurisdictions free of charge, under the concept that, no matter where you are in the state, you could dial 311 the same as 911 and have somebody answer the phone and give you the direction and information that you might need. It was, I think it was very, very well established as far as it goes for how a model type system on a statewide basis could be. I think it brought tremendous benefit to the 911 community in that it would pull calls off of the 911 centers and make that easier, less burdensome for them at the local jurisdiction. From the emergency management perspective, I saw a couple wins with it, and that was at the time of disaster, we generally set up what we call rumor control lines or information lines, and no matter where you would be in the state, all you have to do is remember 311. Everybody and their brother sets up an 800 number, of which we have thousands of 800 numbers, and if there's anybody in the room that can recite more than 10 800 numbers, I'll buy you scotch after the meeting. It's absurd. I will do that. I will do that. So, it has that benefit. And then also on the emergency management side of things, that after a disaster, and actually during a disaster, damage assessment is essential, that we know as quickly as possible. Again, a 311 number that everybody can remember and know would have been there in place statewide. So I think it's an excellent opportunity for the state government as well as the local jurisdictions to come together and establish something that will work for all of us statewide and have more benefit than we probably truly realize at this point in time. And I'll end with the simplification of it, that we truly try and focus things at like the 4th grade level. When it comes time for disaster, or when you're in a disaster, not necessarily when it becomes time for it, but when you're involved with a disaster, the last thing you need to have to do is sit there and run through an algorithm in your head as to what behavioral actions you have to take. And everybody should be able to remember 911 and 311. And either way, those two numbers will get you to the help you need. So that would be my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I don't like making predictions because I don't like to be unnecessarily wrong, but I am going to predict that we're going to get this through next year. It's such a no-brainer, and COVID and testing and people calling 911 for issues that are not emergency, but that are government-focused. We offer to lighten the load and lighten the fiscal load on our counties. It was such a win-win-win. There are 6 jurisdictions that already have 311. It's working. We offered them, keep doing what you're doing, pay for it yourself, or we'll pay it for you and we'll let you, be part of the state system. Like really, and again, just Secretary Strickland, Bill Ferretti, and others just really thought through all of the components, and it was super helpful. I have to give a shout out to Delegate Ken Kerr, who had never worked on this issue before, from Frederick County, and you should be proud of your guy. He was excellent at explaining it, at answering questions. He was an eager student, and so I am hoping selfishly that he is returned by the voters of District 3 and that he will agree to be my partner again on this issue, because I'm definitely committed to doing this again. I would plan to pre-file it for an early hearing, and I would hope this would move forward. 2 more things I want to say is, one, we'll have a new governor, and so whether it's a Democrat or Republican, I would hope and expect that they would commit to moving this as Governor Hogan did. And second, that I always give a shout out to Congressman David Trone and his staff, because he has been committed to getting federal funds. and it's about $10 million to launch and continue this, according to Secretary Strickland. And so not having to take that from the state budget is really important. So I just want to say that too. Senator Riley.
Submit the bill again next year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by the Vice Chair and Bardana Woods. Any comments, questions, amendment to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor of bringing this bill back next year? All those opposed to bringing the bill back next year? Anyone is abstaining from bringing the bill back next year? Seeing none, this recommendation, this motion passes unanimously, and we are going to get this one done. And I would love to have as many of you on any of these bills. Stay engaged, submit written testimony, or show in person, assuming that the COVID gods will allow us to do all of that. So those are our bills, and it is precisely noon, which is just kind of amazing. So I'd like to wrap us up. And then we will adjourn to lunch. I want to thank my staff. I want to thank Chicken Ruth's, a local deli where you can go and get a Senator Kagan milkshake if you're ever inclined to do that. And do you have something? Is there a Senator Riley thing at Chicken Ruth's? No, okay. I included my sine die letter at each of your places so you could see how I wrote to my constituents about this commission's work. And with that, I want to end as I began. Which is remembering my friend Carl Henn, who died when he was struck by lightning and who inspired this work. And I want to thank everyone in this room who's watching, who has participated, who has brought their expertise, who has shown patience to me and a willingness to educate me about all these issues. The 911 center directors who have hosted me at your centers and have shown me how it actually works. The consultants at Mission Critical Partners who have been extraordinary. And I'm very sorry that Molly Falls and Sherry Griffith Powell aren't with us today so that I could give them big hugs. But Nikki Tidy and Josh Jack and so many others have been amazing. Heather Gaffin, who's now at the DC PSAP, and just so many others have been so great. And Walt Kaplan, who helped us get started, and my extraordinary vice chair, my legislative colleagues, the four vice chairs, current and former, have been really extraordinary. So unless anyone else would like to make any comments, I want to give a special shout out to everyone who has worked for me over the last 4 years. Ryan Kirby, Ron Zucker, Abby Snyder, and my former interns, legacy fellows, and Susan and Jeff, who are here today and who made the trip and wanted to be here today. Jeff drove down from Harford County, which is a drive. And so I'm just grateful to all of you. And let's keep going. And yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman.
One more thing, item number 5 on our agenda, and maybe, Senator, you had a different thought in mind, but I'd just like to put this on the table. This group, as we mentioned at the outset and throughout, is an extraordinary group of talented, dedicated, educated advocates for what we do. And in a month or two, we're going to be in history. But these issues are going to continue to exist. They're not going to go away. They'll be made new issues. So I ask in very general terms to you, Senator, and you, Senator Riley, and others that are involved, is there some way that as the commission formally ends, there is something created, whatever it may be, and I think of the word caucus, a 911 caucus within both houses of the General Assembly, that can be our go-to advocates in the future so that we don't, when issues arise, have to kind of rebuild this whole thing all over again. I don't know what the mechanisms of that are. I don't know what the possibilities of that are. But I don't want us to leave today and ultimately on June 30 and not have something in place that will carry us and our work and our vision and our passion forward.
Thank you, Steve. Ed, what do you think of that idea? You think it's fun? I do too. I think so too. Spectacular is what he said. Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Me. Mr. Souter, it's such a good idea because what happens is there are so many people who have an interest sitting on the sidelines. A caucus is not necessarily a very formal group, but when bills come up or issues of interest come up, a brief meeting or 15 or 20 folks in the Senate. I can think of former chief of the Level Fire Department, Jack Bailey, former natural resource police officers, people who have served in these types of roles would probably be very happy to spend an hour or so occasionally during the session. So I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure of the mechanism to create a caucus, but we have the Veterans Caucus, Women's Caucus, Black Legislators Caucus. There's a number of them, and I think it would be a very fine idea. I'd like to join, but I'm not eligible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We can have you emeritus or ex officio. So let me be clear, none of you ever gets to get away. So if you get a new job, I hope you will send me any new contact information. And again, next steps will be, so we're not quite done when we're done here today. The next steps will be watching your email for the sort of massaged and finalized versions of these statements. Want to make sure we get them right for when we put it out there, whether that's in the press or to colleagues or whatever that is. So please watch for those, and thank you to those. Some of you are just so responsive to emails and stuff, so I'm grateful for you. Some of you, if you would try to respond, that would be great. Really appreciate that. Again, what we're doing today, we have lunch just outside these doors, and then we will go to the Senate chamber where we will take some pictures. So don't run out too soon. And so we'll do that a little sooner rather than later, maybe, half hour, 45 minutes or something. We'll go over there. And with that, the meeting of the Next Generation 911 Commission is adjourned.